The storm raged outside, and within the dimly lit room, Alex stood, suitcase in hand, staring at the door he was about to walk out of. He'd never imagined he'd live this way, not after everything. But in the back of his mind, the whispers of betrayal kept echoing. His fiancée, Claire, stood by the window, silent, her back to him. The tears that had once filled her eyes had now dried into hardened sorrow. Alex couldn't even remember the last time he'd heard her truly laugh. "I'm sorry, Claire," he muttered, but the words felt empty. The door closed behind him, and a chapter of his life was shut forever. He had made a choice, but in the process, he lost something priceless. Alex didn't look back as he walked away from the house they'd built together. Every step away from her felt like a weight lifting off his shoulders, yet at the same time, his heart felt heavier than it ever had. Claire had been everything to him once. But things had changed. The affair she'd had with his best friend, Matt, wasn't just a betrayal of trust, it was a blow to the foundation of everything they'd worked for. He'd caught them together, their laughter filling the air, and in that moment, something in him snapped. The anger that had burned in his chest was still there, but beneath it, an overwhelming sense of sorrow hung heavily, like the thick fog of a life that was no longer his. The first days after leaving were the hardest. Alex moved into an apartment downtown, trying to drown out the ache that clung to him. Each night, he laid awake, thinking of Claire, of the life they had planned, the future that now seemed like a dream that slipped further away. He had never imagined he could feel so alone. No matter how many times he tried to busy himself with work or distractions, her face haunted him. He couldn't shake the image of her walking away that fateful night, the love they once shared reduced to nothing more than ashes. Despite everything, a small part of him still longed to make things right. But deep down, he knew it was over. There was no going back. Time didn't heal the wounds, it only numbed them. Alex spent his days wrapped in thoughts of what could have been. He found old photographs of him and Claire in the corners of drawers, remnants of their happiness. His fingers traced the edges of those photos, each smile, each touch, feeling like a distant memory of someone he no longer recognized. He could still hear her voice, soft and tender, calling his name like she always did. But the more he tried to grasp at the past, the more it slipped away from him. He couldn't deny the pain anymore, the pain of being left with nothing but memories and broken promises. It was inevitable that they would cross paths again. Matt had tried to reach out to Alex, but Alex refused to answer his calls. It wasn't until one night, in a dimly lit bar, that Alex came face to face with him. Matt's expression was one of regret, but Alex saw it for what it was, guilt, not for the betrayal, but for the loss of a friendship that had once been everything. "I never meant to hurt you, man," Matt said, his voice trembling. But Alex didn't want his apology. He didn't want anything from him. There was no going back from this. The bond they once had, the one they had shared like brothers, was now shattered. And in that moment, Alex knew nothing could repair the damage. The silence that filled Alex's new apartment was suffocating. He missed the sound of Claire's laughter, the way she hummed in the kitchen, the warmth of her presence that had once filled every corner of their home. But now, the silence was his only companion. It wasn't just the absence of Claire that haunted him, it was the silence within himself. He no longer recognized who he had become. He had chosen his pride over love, and now he had nothing but regret. The walls seemed to close in on him each day as he struggled to find meaning in a life that felt empty. His loneliness was a reminder that sometimes, the choices we make are the ones we must live with forever. Alex began to change. Not for anyone else, but for himself. He took up boxing to channel the anger that still burned in his chest. The training sessions became his refuge, the sweat and pain a temporary escape from the chaos inside his mind. Slowly, he started to rebuild himself. But rebuilding didn't mean forgiveness. Not yet. He was haunted by his decisions, and the weight of his betrayal to Claire still clung to him like an anchor. He had spent so many years in denial about the consequences of his actions. It wasn't until now, when he was finally alone, that he began to understand just how much he had lost, and how hard it was going to be to find his way back. Just when Alex thought he could finally let go, Claire appeared in his life again, this time unexpected, this time stronger. She had moved on, or at least that's what she wanted him to think. They sat across from each other in a small cafe, the air thick with tension. She no longer looked like the woman he had once known. There was a certain peace in her eyes that he had never seen before. But beneath that calm, Alex could sense the pain she had carried. She wasn't just here for a reconciliation, she was here to tell him something important, something that would change everything. Claire's voice cracked as she spoke, her eyes never leaving his. "I've forgiven you," she said, almost in disbelief, as if the words didn't belong to her. "I never wanted to hurt you. But I couldn't wait forever, Alex. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of what we were." Her words felt like a slap to his heart, but she wasn't angry. She was broken, just like him, but she had moved on in a way that he hadn't. "I loved you. I always will. But I have to love myself now. I need to let go." In that moment, Alex realized that forgiveness wasn't just for him. It was for both of them. She was letting go, and so should he. The hardest part wasn't walking away from Claire. It was letting go of the version of himself he had been holding on to. The man who had loved her fiercely but had failed her completely. As Claire walked out of his life for the second time, Alex knew this was the final goodbye. This time, he had no more excuses. He was alone with his thoughts, with his regrets. But as painful as it was, he knew this was the only way to heal. He had to forgive himself. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was the only way forward. He had to let go of the past, even if it meant sacrificing the future he had once imagined. Months passed before Alex began to feel the weight lift off his chest. The guilt, the anger, the confusion, all of it began to fade. He started therapy, something he had once been too proud to do. And with each session, he came to understand that healing wasn't linear. Some days, the pain would come back like a wave, crashing over him, but he knew how to handle it now. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't fixed. But he was learning. He was learning to live with his mistakes and forgive the man he had once been. Slowly, Alex was finding peace. Alex woke up one morning to a quiet stillness. No storm, no anger, no betrayal hanging over him. He didn't feel the need to rush through his day, to avoid the past or the future. For the first time in a long time, he felt at ease with himself. He had learned that redemption didn't come from regaining what was lost, but from accepting what had happened. Claire was no longer a part of his life, but she had given him something invaluable, the ability to love and forgive, even when it seemed impossible. The day came when Alex stood in front of Matt again, no longer filled with the rage that had once consumed him. Matt had reached out, a tentative message asking for a chance to talk. Their conversation wasn't about the past. It wasn't about Claire. It was about the choices they had both made, the weight of their sacrifices, and the price of their broken friendship. Alex realized in that moment that true forgiveness wasn't about forgetting the hurt, but about understanding why it happened and moving forward. Years passed, and Alex found himself in a new relationship, one built on mutual respect, communication, and honesty. It wasn't the same as what he had with Claire, but it was real. He had learned that love wasn't just about passion and connection, it was about growth. And he had grown. Slowly, he had learned to love again. But this time, he wasn't afraid of the future. He had learned that the past didn't define him. The future was his to create. On the eve of his wedding, Alex stood alone in the room, looking at the man in the mirror. The man who had been broken and rebuilt, the man who had loved and lost, but who had found himself again. He had found peace, forgiveness, and redemption. And now, as he was about to step into a new chapter of his life, he knew one thing for certain: the mistakes of the past no longer held him back. He was ready for what came next. He was ready for love. The end. Please like, comment, and share. Subscribe for more stories.